Welcome to the Sankofa Ancestor Shrine, where every week we invite spiritual Black folk to reconnect with our ancestors as we journey through the crossroads. Please consider donating through patreon.com/Sankofa Shrine. Greetings and honor to the ancestors. We are so excited to see this new day, to see all of the possibilities that stretch before us. We're grateful to have woken up and to just be as we are in this moment, as far as we've come, just be. This week, ancestors, we ask that you help us with our internal dialogue, with the sacred words that we use on ourselves, even as we struggle through all of the many different things coming at us in all directions right now. We are looking for an opportunity to be able to speak wellness into ourselves, into our goals, into our mindset. So we are not stagnated in fear and grief and stress and worries, but instead we are finding ways to be proactive, finding ways to overcome these situations and work towards our goals, and even just release that stress and be able to sit in a few moments of silence and happiness without that weight of all that is crashing down. We ask for that peace and serenity that sacred words and sacred dialogue within ourselves and with ourselves will bring, as well as the reminder to continue the sacred dialogue with you, ancestors. We are grateful for your place in our spirits, in our altars, and in our lives. Ashe. Our sacred movement session today involves a free movement to very ambient guitar music with nature sounds in the background. I thought that this could be a really beautiful time to focus on something in our lives that we are grateful for, that we have enjoyed, that it can be anything really that you're grateful for. So for this session, we'll take a few minutes or seconds, should I say, in the very beginning to really think about what it is that you're grateful about and just channel that grateful energy towards it as you do your sacred intuitive movement. So this can be dancing, you can just sit, you can move your arms, you can move nothing, you can just be still, you can just feel the stillness. Whatever movement or non-movement you feel will be sacred for you in this moment, especially as you well up with gratitude for what you have and what's around you. Personally, I ended up choosing my home. So there's many things I suppose we could all think about that we're grateful for, but just heads up that that's coming first. Though we are going to do our fire breathing. We're going to do 200 fire breaths, keep our lungs going. If you want to do more, of course you can. We're getting kind of into the year, so we technically should be up a little further, but I think 200 is pretty good. If you feel yourself getting lightheaded, remember this is not a race. This is just bringing oxygen into our mind to connect better with the spirit realm, as well as building our lungs. So if you're feeling lightheaded, just stop, breathe normal, and continue to practice every day. Remember, when you breathe in, your tummy should go out. When you breathe out, your tummy should go in. All right, and I will do my best to keep time with the counting. I'm not good at that at all. So here we go. I'll try and ring the bell every 50. Welcome to the Sankofa Ancestor Shrine. I'm your host, Sacred Woman Practitioner Tatami. Today I want to first give a thank you to the patrons. Recently I got a bill for the video editor that I use. It's an app and I was able to pay it off quickly because of you. So thank you so much to everybody who donates $1 a month, $5 a month. A few of you donate $10 and $15 a month. It's a blessing and it really helps at times like that to keep this operation going smoothly. A lot of the times it does seem like, these things would be so easy to do. I know before I started making the videos, I never realized like the different costs that, incur for, and you can hear me very clearly because I got a microphone. This is an actual, a little bit more expensive microphone and it's a little big so you can kind of see it. So that's what you're going to be seeing from now on. But I want to thank the patrons for that too, because without you, that would not be possible, especially right now with times being so tough. So at any rate, we now finally have a better sound going on again. We used to have a microphone, a cheaper one. I think I spent like $15 the first time, and it was one of those ones you have to like clip on you. But it broke. I don't know what happened. But at any rate, we're spending too much time on this. So why am I talking so long on these microphones? But at any rate, I went for a little, sprung for a little something more this time. So I'm really excited to be using this one. Today, we are going to be reading from a book, but I'm going to give you full disclosure before we start that I actually am not going to post the link to this book down below because I encourage you to find it secondhand at a thrift shop if it interests you, if the subject matter interests you, because the writer is sadly has come out as a Terf in the last decade or so. So in solidarity with our Black and Indigenous LGBTQ members of our community, I highly suggest you not buy this book full price from brand new, right? So the Luisah Teish is the teacher, and she's somebody who she's just been a huge part of the Black community, spiritual community, African traditional religious community for a long time, back in the 80s, 90s. I actually inherited this book from my mother-in-law, okay? And she was a very devout Christian woman. So yeah, that's kind of the background on this is that, she's a huge part of the community. She was one of the pioneers. And so she's not really somebody that can be like canceled, eradicated from everything because she's bound to pop up here and there, especially because she's part of the foundation of this community, as it were, especially of this community that's still alive and is our elders at this point. Definitely her books are up there with, Queen Afua's, but Queen has never said anything turfy or done anything turfy. She does adhere to a very strict feminine woman type of, lifestyle, which I'm sure can rub some people the wrong way and also may participate unintendedly into, oppression of certain peoples. But certainly Luisah wrote like an article and then it was put into a book with a bunch of other, like a lot more crazy writers. The people who said a lot of the more crazy stuff were white people, but she still wrote some pretty crazy stuff and also was in the same book as them. So take with it as you will. However, this is just a book that I happen to have, like I said, from my mother-in-law. So it's one that I've kept over the years and still peruse every once in a while. And even though she doesn't, a lot of people now don't like her stuff also because she's pretty like, call on Oya, call on Yamaya, you know what I mean? That type of behavior, which a lot of people really say you shouldn't do now because it can really open up doors that you ain't ready to open, okay? And if you're not initiated, you're just calling out to people because you like their aesthetic, you know what I mean? That's just not how all this works when you're not, when you're participating in this religion and with a lot of African traditional religions. So a lot of her stuff is obsolete in that way, but she does in Carnival of the Spirit, she goes over a lot of different cultures and practices for the different seasons. And especially in America, because we're like this melting pot, right? Everybody's come here and we've all kind of started to take from each other. And that's like just how it turns out. Sometimes it's just a beautiful thing, often, let's just say. It's a beautiful thing where we find out we like Mexican food, or, we realize that that type of dress is actually really comfortable. We should all be wearing this type of dress, right? Like, I don't know, the muumuu comes to mind. It was a traditional dress in Hawaii, and now it just is the word we use for any huge bag shapeless dress. So, and I don't know how great that is in all terms of using that word, but it is just something that we've all collectively started doing, right? We all use the word punani now, right? So let me see. We have this situation where we all have adopted each other's cultures, and so here in America, that's basically what she was doing in this book, is showing all of those different, this is the European, this is the Native American, this is the African, this is etc., who all the different cultures. Some of this is like Asian, right? Some of it's Islander. So she kind of talks about that. So we're actually starting in a section that she calls Turtle Soup, and we're going to be reading from the summer portion for the summer season. And I thought it would be appropriate, and I also thought the history would be nice, and also thinking about ways to apply the history. So she calls this section Turtle Soup because you may or may not know that Native people called this area Turtle Island initially. And it was a very sacred place to them, this area we call the United States, and it had sacred spaces all up and down, right? Pretty much all of our national parks are actually sacred spaces that they were fighting to preserve. And in fact, all of our natural areas had sacred spaces. Some were more sacred than others, more important than others, should I say. But a lot of sacred spaces throughout all of America, because nature is just inspiring, awe-inspiring, powerful. It makes you feel humble, all of those wonderful things. So at any rate, they called this area Turtle Island. So she's calling it Turtle Soup because so many have come here, changed the land, changed the way things are. And what we have now is like an amalgamation of a lot of things. Even when, you strictly kind of stay in your own people here in America, if you go back to the motherland, it's totally different. They don't do anything like what you do here, right? Because you've kind of gotten used to the way things are done here, the different advantages and disadvantages compared to where you come from. So it all just changes, right, when you come to America. So this is page 141, if you happen to have this book. As people of different lands mingle, they adopt each other's celebrations. Each group attempts to acclimate itself to the energy of the land and to harmonize with the temperament of the other people. Each ethnic group brings its own unique flavor to the cultural soup. Ingredients from the far corners of the world are blended and given birth to something new that is very old. And I think that the way she said that was really astute, because it can be applied to our religions, right? To African traditional religion, to the derived religions, the ways we're practicing them now, and understanding that it can't be practiced exactly as it was 200, 500 years ago. We can learn some of those things and reproduce them in some ways, but it's never going to be exactly the same. And in fact, some things are going to evolve naturally, and it's going to be okay, because times are changing, the people who are connecting are changing, the places we live are changing, and that's just the way it is. And being able to accept that and consider it still powerful, I think, is a lesson that we'll all come to learn. Balancing that old and new, birthing something new that is still chock full of the old, that's just something we're all going to have to learn to do more and more as time goes on. The culture of New Orleans in the 1800s was European, French, Spanish, English, African, Dahomian, Congolese, and Native American, Choctaw. The Catholic Church had long ago usurped the original ecocentric pagan holidays and had turned them into saints' days. European colonists had invaded Turtle Island and were busily exploiting the natural resources while systematically eliminating the original caretakers of the land, the Native American people. And this was happening South America, Africa, Australia, you name it. The islands, you name it. The slave trader brought nature-worshipping people from the forests of equatorial Africa and placed them on tobacco, sugar, cane, and cotton plantations of the South. In their motherland, these people had entertained a host of deities and ancestral spirits. They had developed a liturgical theater of magnificent music and dance and were educated about life from an oral tradition rich in folkloric characters. On the plantation, these people found themselves in a very different cultural climate, but were able to bring their unique flavor to the soup even under severely oppressive conditions. All right, so first of all, that part is really important because she's talking about that connection with the land, which Black people have always had. I know we're like often like written off as like, we don't go camping, we don't swim, we don't, oh wow, this Black person was the first person to go hiking somewhere. Like that's like how it feels sometimes with some of these things, because we have been, I think it's because of the forced land connection, we now have assumed like, oh, like we don't need to be connected to the land, or like we have bad attributes of the land, but we've always been connected with the land, right? We were connected with the land in Africa. Then when we came here, we became masters of the land, the farmland, the agricultural lands where we were. And this is also one of the reasons why I say when, you know, when you're burning smoke cleansing for things, or you're making like herbal mixes of things, tobacco is way more of a, sorry, my kids are shouting out there. All right, so mixing tobacco is actually more of a connective plant to us than sage. Sage is, you know, a very sacred plant to Native Americans, to Turtle Island. And so I guess by default, you could feel a connection with it there, but it's really not something that we or anybody besides Native American people have that true sacred connection with. But tobacco is something that we handled, that we rolled, that we traded amongst each other. There's just a huge cultural significance around tobacco and African Americans in the country, as well as like sugar. We have these sugar jars, we have the sweet jars, right? We sweeten up situations. That's another reason like we have that connection with sugar, you know. And then what was the last one? She said the cotton, right? Obviously cotton. You'll see some people will absolutely put cotton like on the branch on their altar. They'll go down south and get one from the plantation, or they'll buy one from somebody, get it shipped to them. Some people use it as decor in their home. They put it on the altar. They put it on like the shelves when they make mini altars around the home. Lisa Marie Goodson, I've always recommended her for Sacred Space. She has the Afrocentric decor channel, and she absolutely puts cotton around her home. I'll be real, I can't put cotton around my home. I can't do it. I won't. And one time I even saw somebody make like a very, it was like, I can't tell if it was really a joke or if like the person really like was trying to put together like an altar with what they had. So if it was somebody just trying to put an altar together with what they had, like y'all, they had like cleaners and things up there. They had some just really confusing stuff. And then like they had cotton balls, like CVS balls on the front. And I was like, I wouldn't put it, even if it was like, maybe if it was like a tiny clipping, but I've seen people have huge ones. I just couldn't look at that every day. I really honestly couldn't. That's just me and my bloodline, maybe. I don't know. But if it was a small one, like tucked into the corner of an altar, I could probably handle that. But at any rate, just cotton balls, like, no, it was too much. But at any rate, use what you have. Don't let me mock you out of anything, because if that's what you have and that's what you, like, literally, if that's all you have, please use what you have, because cotton balls do have cotton in them. At the end of the day, you still have the connection with that plant. Personally, I just don't. That's just me, though. Let's see. So I did want to say that, you know, we did come from Africa, bring a lot of this tradition, bring it and infuse it into the land, and infuse it into our own connection with the land, which is why if you'll notice, so many of us really did try to purchase land. It's just, it was so set up against us. It was set up against us to buy it in the first place. It was set up against us where we could purchase. And then it was set up against us that it could easily be taken away at any time. When they build highways through something, they don't go through, you know, Atherton. They go through our cities. They go through our land. They go through our stuff. Our stuff gets seized. Our stuff becomes lowered in value. Our stuff, all those things. So it's a real issue when it comes to, you know, being able to being able to have that connection with land, it became that much harder, right? And so a lot of people have, eventually just kind of like given up or, moved on, or it's also, the wealth gap is just becoming so much that being able to get our hands on land, it becomes increasingly difficult. And then worse, we have people like, I don't know, Dr. Umar, who was it, who was about to have a school for boys and got all that money and he still don't have any land. Like he was supposed to buy land and then he was supposed to like erect a structure or something like right, or he was supposed to buy land with a structure already that just needed renovating. y'all y'all and that's who got the money, and there's nothing to show for it. There's no school for boys, there's nothing, there's not a thing out there. So my kids are playing something that has them like running from end to end of the house, like screaming at each other, banging against walls and doors. Like I have no idea what's going on. And I'm sure my husband's just like, I don't know, playing games or watching a show or something as this occurs. Oh my goodness. All right. So, that's why I wanted to talk about that. Oh, and the rich oral tradition. We passed that down. We were able to create our own. And I think we should be able to use this as inspiration for us now, right? Us now with our religion, with us coming into new territory. We're in a new century, things are changing. And I do think us choosing to continue to, help it grow and help it, like we are a little more safe in a lot of ways. So helping our traditions spread and being more open about them and frank about them, especially online and in media, it really helps. It really helps with a lot of people. Let's continue on. I cannot get them to stop yelling. I don't know what I'm like. What are you doing? Like, what's going? Like, they do not care. I don't understand. All right. So let me see. New Orleans Summer. She said the following poem was written in honor of Kalinda, which was traditionally danced on the summer solstice in New Orleans. Bembe Ngoma. Once drum and dance met for a fateful date, as heaven's hourglass of time had told. The gods above sat patiently to wait for drum and dance to sing songs of old. As they began to baye and to chant, Shango drums beat, Oshun, she screamed, Miel. Mountains rose to join in love's sweet dance, and waters flowed from passion's deep blue well. Danse Kalinda, the words were spoken. Badoom, badoom, bata, drums beat, an ancient African spell was broken. As heaven and earth agreed to meet, the angry storm became a gentle breeze, and all the gods looked upon us, pleased. All right, so I wanted to this is a poem by Luisah Teish. She put a few asterisks in for words or things that we may not know. So we have Baile, which was the Spanish dance. Shango, which is the Yoruba god of lightning, power, and mankind. Oshun, Yoruba goddess of rivers, beauty, love, and womankind. Spanish let's see, this was miel, was Spanish for honey, a sacrificial food of Oshun. The Kalinda was a mating dance done by Louisiana slaves from Dahomey. And bata drums, it says bata was the membrophones used in voodoo ceremonies. There we go. So she has a lot of words in here, but that was the point, was that it was about mixing the old with the new, especially in like South America. You can really see this, especially in New Orleans type of areas. You can really see this with hoodoo and conjure. A lot of people don't realize how much of it is kind of taken from so many different tribes in Africa, and really we've all had to connect over here. And yes, like there has been some Native American influence, absolutely, and some, I'm sure, some kind of South American indigenous influence into some things as well, and some type of European influence, not really, like a lot of the things that they claim, I mean, maybe it's comes from being like mixed, like is the only kind of claim I can see, with European influence. But the Christian influences, it's not really an influence. It's more like using the symbolism so that you wouldn't be in trouble. So like that's kind of the European influence that I will give credit to, is that we do see certain things. But even then, crosses you can find in Africa long before Christianity. It's kind of a universal symbol. The crossroads as well, but the actual cross you can find in West Africa for indigenous religions. But it was, so therefore it was pretty simple. You were able to switch like certain gods and use a certain saint's face instead, and certain saint's name, but you were really speaking of this other god. So that's kind of the European influence that you see. And I've noticed, like, as we shed that, because we don't really need it. A lot of people are calling foul. They're afraid of like the devil because we're using our own images, and then also that feeling of oppression that Christians feel when you're no longer Christian, which is very intriguing. But yeah, so that's kind of the influence that we see there. But, there is, the ways music can come together, the way the materials that are available, very European, right? We can have access to candles, tarot cards, etc. It's just kind of the way that this community is built up, the way the United States is built up. And so here she's really talking about how there is that blend, and that it can be done respectfully. It can also be done very disrespectfully, but it can be done respectfully. And seeing that and using that for your power and strength, and also finding ways to appease your gods, your ancestors, even when you're not in the most ideal of situations, is another skill that I think she's alluding to here. So she goes on to say, let me see. One of the main ingredients in the culture of New Orleans was the presence of voodoo, as dramatized by the Queen Mother, Mademoiselle Marie Laveau. She and her daughters did much to unify the women of New Orleans, black and white, rich and poor, pagan and Christian. The black codes regulated the lives of Louisiana slaves and attempted to suppress the social and spiritual life of the free gens de couleur. Congo Square was the Apollo of New Orleans, the place where the best voodoo dancing in town could be witnessed. These dances were often raided by the police during a long political campaign against African religions that ravaged the city between 1820 and 1860. But the dances in Congo Square were performances staged for the benefit of the disruptors. The real ceremonies were conducted from Mamselle's cabin at Bayou St. John, and according to local folklore, it was there that she held her annual midsummer feast on June 24th, the eve of St. John. So I think that part also gave us a little information, just in the sense that first there were white people who were taught, some different parts of African traditional religion, which is a lot of the time when they, you find them inserting things. Typically, those things haven't really stuck. There's not really anything, except for now we have things like using honey instead of sugar, and sugar syrup in jars. That was kind of made by white practitioners, one of whom had a friend who had a bee farm. You know what I mean? So she kind of made it seem like honey was the thing. But in reality, our ancestors really wouldn't have had their hands on honey that often, and the idea that they would only specifically use honey, therefore would have, it just isn't what it is, but overall, historically, that stuff hasn't really stuck, and it typically gets debunked, as I just did with you. All right, and then also, where was I? Oh, also this idea that they had everything in hiding still. So I think that's also a friendly reminder that, what you see on social media, that's for the benefit of reminder, beauty, aesthetic, spreading the word, maybe even pissing some people off. I don't know, standing up for your rights in some ways. But at the end of the day, the real stuff that you really work on is sacred, it's secret, it's hidden, it's with working with the people you have. It doesn't have to be shouted out to the rooftops, or at least every little thing doesn't, right? Some things absolutely can be shared. A lot of things absolutely should just be kept to yourself, mostly for your protection, but also because actually, I guess it is all protection. It's all protection, really, of yourself, of your ideas, of yourself from other people. It just kind of is what it is. So keeping it sacred is important, not just because, like, I don't know, other practitioners might try and harm you, but because a because people who don't believe that your religion should exist may see you and be upset and try and sabotage you in some way. She's so I believe this next part was written by Laveau herself. She said, "The special drum be played then. It's a cowhide stretched over a half barrel." Is it making use with what you have? "Beat with a jawbone. The one around her altar fix everything for the feast." Oh, wait, maybe this isn't written by her then. What did it say? Oh, this is local folklore. Oh, she's going to write at the end. It's got a little thing on the... Okay, anyway, sorry. "The one around her altar fix everything for the feast. Nobody sees Marie Laveau for 9 days before the feast, but when the great crowd of people at the feast call upon her, she would rise out of the waters of the lake with a great communion candle burning upon her head and another in each of her hands. She walked upon the waters to the shore. As a little boy, I saw her myself. When the feast was over, she went back in the lake and nobody saw her for 9 days again." So if you're somebody who has been watching these videos, this actually probably just reminded you of a certain scene from a certain book. Do I have it? Yes, I do. Do you remember the initiation of Zora Neale Hurston? That is pretty spot on. There we go. And that she was not, I don't remember, was this one voodoo? Yes it was. I believe that was her. Marie Laveau's nephew was who initiated Zora, and that is exactly what she went through. She absolutely stood in the lake waist deep with this, but she didn't go under the water 9 days, all that stuff. That didn't happen, but this was a pretty cool connection. I don't know where, we're gonna have to look in the back now. We're gonna have to see where that came from. What? It doesn't say here, huh? There we go. Ah, that is exactly where she got it from. I was like, doesn't that sound familiar? Doesn't that sound exactly like what we read? But there you have it. So, at any rate, I was like, I know I've read this. The dance performed at this time was a combination of movements retained from an African style of stick fighting practiced in Trinidad. An early version of the kalinda was danced only by men, stripped to the waist, brandishing sticks in a mock fight while at the same time balancing upon their heads bottles of water. As soon as a dancer spilled a drop of his water, he was banished from the field. It is interesting to note in these descriptions that the men fight while balancing water on their heads, and that Mamselle emerges from water balancing burning candles on her head. The songs that accompanied these dances had much in common with Trinidadian calypso. Often the songs appeared to speak of seasonal celebrations, sensuous lovemaking, but they also addressed political injustice and contained a call to act of rebellions both great and small. Practically every city official found himself the subject of one of these songs, and slave women used the songs to declare themselves smarter and prettier than their mistresses. So here we have songs being used for politics to speak of injustices. This is something that Black people have done literally since the beginning of time. Who is it? Roy Wood Jr., who made a joke about, like, if you want to know what's going on with Black people, just listen to our music. He was like, we invented like a whole genre called blues, and you're telling me you're surprised. Like, he came out with this a couple weeks ago. It was pretty good. I was like, this guy's so spot on. Y'all have to watch that. But anyways, so here we have this time where people are singing it. We are singing affirmations, speaking things into existence. And they probably didn't have to speak too much into existence to be more beautiful than a lot of their older people who owned them. That comes into play later on when they started making, like, it was at the Tignon laws where Black women had to cover their hair and all this stuff because they were just looking too fine out here. So this idea of speaking out out loud what you needed, singing out loud what you needed, making songs about the city officials, speaking over the city officials, as well as speaking out against them and what they are doing, and spreading the message of what they're doing through this oral tradition. Again, continuing the oral tradition that we've taken from Africa. And, you know, as time goes on, we do tend to lose, and that's a humanity thing. Humanity is collectively losing its memory abilities. Initially, we had to memorize oral stories, right? And then we got writing, so we didn't have to memorize as much. And then now we have phones, computers, etc., and we really don't have to memorize as much as we used to. So it's a collective human thing, but it's also sad for, especially for cultures, indigenous tribal cultures who had such rich oral traditions and for so long. Let's see, this was the dance that celebrated the strength of the sun and the sweetness of fresh water. These were the songs used to fight and to love. The ceremonies at Bayou St. John could go on late into the night. But in the square, when the 9 o'clock cannon was fired in the place d'armes, the sun went down for those who wore black skin and the slaver's brand. And the soup lost its flavor until they all returned. I love the way she says that, because isn't it the truth that they act like, oh, look, it would all just be better if you all left. They would be crying bitch tears if every person of color left. Like, I'm so serious. But it's not their place to ask anybody to leave. This is not really. It's no one's place except for the Native American people. And honestly, they got so many of us in poverty. Like, I would if I could, you know. But honey, can't. We all been here too long. Of this romance, George Washington Cable wrote, there is the pathos of slavery, the poetry of the weak oppressed by the strong, and of limbs that danced after toil, and of barbaric lovemaking. The rags and semi-nakedness, the bambula drum, and the dance, and almost the banjo are gone, but the bizarre melodies and dark lovers' apostrophes live on. What? Okay. I'm sorry. We're going to pause for a second because I'm just like, what did I just read? Is he basically saying, like, once you take it all away, all that's left, like, once the black folks leave and, like, all this music and the rhythm of everything left is just bizarre melodies and dark lovers apostrophes? Like, it's just white peopling? Is that what he's trying to say? I'm not even sure. But she goes on to say, rituals similar to those practiced in old New Orleans lived on also in Puerto Rico, Trinidad, Togo, etc., etc. Right? This stuff is found all over. So the last part she wrote is about where the sun is, sun in Cancer, sun in Leo. I thought this might be interesting for us. She says summer begins with solstice on June 21st and ends with the autumn equinox on September 21st. During this time, the sun travels through the astrological signs Cancer, Leo, Virgo. Each sign is ruled by a planet, and the moon passes through each sign in the zodiac within each month. The nature of the planet lends powers and flavor to each sign. The sun in Cancer, June 21st to July 22nd, is ruled by the moon. Its symbol is the crab. Both the moon and the sign Cancer are regarded as feminine, watery, intuitive, and emotional. They represent the archetypal mother. The sun in Leo, July 23rd to August 22nd, is ruled by the sun. Its symbol is the lion. Both the sun and Leo bespeak a brightness, warmth, and generative power. Both are hot, dry, willful, and splendid. The sun in Virgo, August 23rd to September 21st, is ruled by Mercury. Its symbol is the Virgin holding a sheaf of wheat. The planet Mercury is regarded as a catalyst, one who moves between the potential and the actual. The Virgin holding the wheat sheaf stands between the potential to create and the fruit of her womb, the harvest. Virgo represents purity. Mercury represents process. In summer, we experience the pas de deux between Moon Mother Cancer and Sun Father Leo that results in the fertility of the earth, Virgo, and the subsequent harvest on the autumn equinox. Whether it is the sun or the moon that moves through the sign, they share in the energy of the parent planet, and their dance creates a conjunction of energy that has an effect on earth life. That energy can be used wisely. Isn't that just the most beautiful thing? I was actually recently watching documentaries and thinking that exact thing. What a blessing that the sun and the moon work together with the atmosphere and everything, and it's all just so perfectly created to make this earth where the salmon can swim upstream and jump up the waterfalls to their place of birth, and they feed the whole ocean, and the dolphins eat the fish, and their feces feeds the phytoplankton, and then the phytoplankton creates half of our oxygen on Earth. Is comes from the ocean and those little green algae and things in there. So every other breath we take, we can thank the oceans, and the first breath we can thank the land. And isn't it amazing how it all comes together and create this little child we call Mother Earth? This beautiful thing, right? That's the conjunction of all these other things. And yet we salmon farm, just slit them open and dump the eggs out and the sperm and mix it together, and that's the fish now. That's it. That's the way we treat it. So it's like this whole sacred, beautiful process in which when our food is healthy, we're healthy, and we have this marriage, this sacred marriage with our food and our planet, and we don't treat it that way, do we? The way she said this is so beautiful, and yet it takes such a mindset switch to really operate like that in our daily life. And then even still, when you want to, you often can't. So it is what it is. But at any rate, the energy can be used wisely. I like how she noted that, how paying attention to this really does impact what we're doing, and finding ways to work with what our goals are, as well as find ways to alter them. You know what I'm saying? Slightly shift as things occur, and find ways to have new ideas. Stay open and stay available to the possibilities, and how what you're doing now may just slightly change or switch track or set you up for something else down the road. So we're going to finish this up. We can acclimate ourselves to the natural force through the manipulation of symbols and sacred objects, and we can direct the flow of that energy through thought, speech, and movement. The ritual that follows, we're not going to read the ritual that follows. My bad. It's she has like a summer ritual here, but like I said, there's just like she just calls on people's gods. She do a lot here. And she'll like I said, she'll call on random like energies, which it's like I just don't know enough. I wouldn't. And like I'd sooner read you a ritual out of a Wiccan book, because I'd maybe understand what they were doing a little bit more than I would, just messing with the Yoruba religion. That's not really what we do here. But if you're interested, I do suggest that you go to your local library. Likely it will be there. And likely you can, and then that way you can even see if you want to have a copy of it in your home. That's what I would actually highly suggest you do. Just go to the library, check it out. There's a good chance it's here. And if not, I think you could probably get support your local thrift shop. There's a lot of thrift shops that sell copies of these types of things. And I'd probably have put mine there too, but it was, like I said, it's one of the few things I have of my mother-in-law's, and I cherish that. So it's staying in my house. It is what it is. All right. Thank you so much for watching and tuning in. Thanks again to the patrons who helped get those things, keep this operation running smoothly in the background. You're a real one, and I appreciate you. And thank you so much to everybody who views these all the way through. You actually really help, because we are still 1,000 hours short of viewed content to be able to monetize, which could also help us out in a lot of ways and get us, out there. So anyways, like, share, subscribe, leave comments. Comments also help for videos to be viewed. These are things that are just free and easy, so it really helps. Thank you to everyone who has. May your ancestors and spirit guides be with you at every crossroads, and I will see you next time.